The cold hit me first, a shocking, deep chill that seeped right through the cotton of my brand new shirt. I looked down, watching the dark red stain spread across the white fabric like a blood stain on fresh snow. The glass was still in his hand, now empty. The entire dining room was frozen. You could have heard a pin drop over the gentle hum of the ship's engine. Every eye at the table was on me. And then Mark spoke. His voice was all false concern, dripping with a sweetness that made my stomach turn. "Oops, Alex, man, I am so sorry. My hand just slipped." He shook his head, putting on a show for our entire family. My aunt, my uncle, his wife, they were all just staring. "Guess some people just can't carry themselves with class, huh, Alex? Always the clumsy one." A few nervous titters came from the other end of the table. My face was burning. The wine was so cold it felt like it was burning my skin. I could smell it, sharp and tannic, the expensive Merlot he'd been bragging about all night. I didn't look at the family. I didn't look at the other diners who were starting to whisper. I kept my eyes locked on Mark, on his smug, satisfied smile. He'd done this on purpose. This was the final move, the grand finale of his little performance to show everyone just who was the successful one and who was the failure. He thought he'd won. He thought he'd put me in my place, once and for all. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper just for me, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "Don't worry, buddy. It was probably a cheap suit anyway. I can recommend my tailor if you can ever afford him." That's when something in me just clicked. The anger, the humiliation, it all drained away, replaced by a calm so absolute it was terrifying. I slowly picked up my white linen napkin and dabbed at my chest. It was useless. The stain was set. The suit was ruined. But the suit didn't matter. Nothing on me mattered except for one thing, the one thing he didn't know about. I took a slow, quiet breath. I could feel the rough texture of the napkin in my hand. "You're right, Mark," I said, my voice calm and steady, cutting through the tense silence. "This suit was cheap." I let my hand drift to the inside breast pocket of my jacket. The fabric was soaked through, cold and heavy against my chest. My fingers found the small, hard rectangle nestled within. I carefully pulled it out. The paper was thick, high quality. A single, perfect drop of red wine had bled onto one corner, a tiny scarlet jewel on the pale green paper. I held it up between my thumb and forefinger. "What you just ruined wasn't." I placed it gently on the white tablecloth right beside my wine-soaked plate. I smoothed it out, the familiar logo, the printed numbers, the date. The silence in our little corner of the dining room was no longer just awkward. It was profound. It was deafening. It was the silence before the storm. My Aunt Carol was the first to break it. She squinted, leaning forward. "Alex, what is that?" Mark's smile had finally vanished. His eyes were fixed on the ticket, on that single drop of red wine. His brain was trying to process it, to connect the dots. I saw the confusion first, then the dawning realization, and then the first flicker of pure, unadulterated horror. I looked directly at him, my voice still barely a whisper, but it carried every ounce of the betrayal I'd felt just an hour before. "This suit was 50% off at Macy's. This ticket is worth $1,200,000. Or it was before you covered it in Cabernet Sauvignon. 3 weeks, that's all it was. 3 weeks between the best day of my life and the worst night of it. It all started at O'Malley's, this sports bar off the 101 that Mark and I had been going to since college. The place never changed. The floor was still sticky underfoot, smelling of stale beer and lemon disinfectant. A neon Coors Light sign flickered in the window, casting a blue glow over the scarred wooden booths. I got there first, like always. I was nursing a cold pint of IPA, the hops bitter on my tongue, watching a Giants game on the TV above the bar without really seeing it. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I had to tell someone. And for 30 years that someone had always been Mark. He arrived with his usual entrance, A clap on the back for the bartender. A loud laugh that cut through the murmur of the place. He slid into the booth across from me, his crisp button-down shirt looking out of place. "Alex, my man, sorry I'm late. Just closed a monster deal on a 3-bedroom in Palo Alto. Commission on this one is going to be sweet." That was Mark. Every sentence was a performance, a reminder. He was the successful real estate agent, the golden boy. I was just Alex, the graphic designer who worked from his apartment. "Don't worry about it," I said, pushing his usual Guinness toward him. The dark stout looked like oil in the dim light. "So what's the big news?" he asked, taking a long sip. "You finally get a client who doesn't pay you an exposure?" I smiled. It was his standard joke. I used to think it was funny. I took a deep breath. The ticket felt like it was burning a hole in my wallet, a physical weight in my back pocket. "No, man, it's bigger than that." I pulled out my wallet. It was worn brown leather, a gift from an ex-girlfriend. I slid the ticket out from behind my credit cards. I didn't slam it down or make a show of it. I just placed it on the sticky table between our beers. I hid it. Mark frowned, picking up the ticket between his fingers like it might be dirty. "Hid what? A scratch-off? Alex, come on. These things are a tax on the stupid." "Not a scratch-off," I said, my voice low. "The Mega Millions. The big one. From the 7-Eleven on Elm. I checked the numbers this morning, 5 times. His face went through a series of tiny, rapid changes. Confusion, disbelief, and then something else. Something that looked a lot like panic, just for a split second, before his trademark smile snapped back into place. It was too wide. Too tight. "No way." He breathed the words out, his eyes locked on the little piece of paper. "No way. Seriously? Let me see that thing." He snatched it off the table, holding it up to the flickering neon light, as if he could verify its authenticity right there. His knuckles were white. "This is incredible. This is life-changing money, Alex." He finally looked at me, and his eyes were different. They were calculating. "Do you have any idea what this means? The taxes? The investments? The people who are going to come out of the woodwork?" "I'm still processing it," I admitted, taking the ticket back and carefully slipping it into my wallet. "I haven't told anyone else, not even my mom." "You told me first," he said, and for a second, I saw a flash of the old Mark. The cousin I grew up with, the guy I'd built tree forts with, the one who'd covered for me when I'd snuck out in high school. It made my chest ache. "Of course, man, you're my brother." He reached across the table and squeezed my shoulder. His grip was too tight. "Yeah, brothers. This is wow. We have to celebrate. Properly, not just this dive." He gestured around the bar with disgust, as if he hadn't been the one to suggest meeting here for the last decade. "We will," I said, feeling a genuine smile spread across my face. The relief of sharing the secret was overwhelming. I need to be smart about this. I need to figure it out." "Smart," he repeated, nodding slowly. His eyes had that faraway look he got when he was working an angle. "Yeah, smart is key. You're going to need help, Alex. A lot of help. Good thing you know a guy in the finance game." He winked, but it felt predatory. "Don't you worry about a thing. I've got your back. We're family." He raised his glass. "To new beginnings." I clinked my pint against his. "To new beginnings." I should have seen it then. The hunger in his eyes. The way he said "we." The way his congratulations felt less like joy for me and more like a plan forming for him. But I was naive. I was riding the high of a miracle. I saw my oldest friend, my brother. All I saw was the person I trusted most in the world. I had no idea that the man sitting across from me, in that sticky booth, was already gone. He'd been replaced by a stranger who saw my dream not as something to share, but as something to own. The high from telling Mark lasted about a day. Then, the calls started. It was never just a casual check-in anymore. Every conversation had a new purpose. "Alex, buddy, it's Mark. Listen, I was thinking about your situation. You need a wealth manager. Not just any guy. A shark. I know a guy, used to work on Wall Street. I can set up a meeting." I was sitting at my drafting table, the soft glow of the computer screen, the only light in my apartment. The faint smell of my coffee going cold filled the room. "Mark, it's really okay," I haven't even cashed it yet. I'm just trying to breathe. Breathing is what poor people do, Alex. You need to act. This money is a ticking clock. Let me help you." He started showing up unannounced. A knock on my door on a Tuesday afternoon. There he was, in his sharp blazer, holding 2 coffees from that fancy place downtown. "Brought you a latte. We need to talk asset allocation." He'd walk in, his eyes scanning my apartment, the second-hand couch, the prints of my own designs on the wall, with a new kind of scrutiny. It wasn't just Mark looking at my place anymore. It was a real estate agent assessing square footage, a financier assessing net worth. The real shift happened at my parents' house that weekend, a family barbecue. The smell of charcoal and sizzling burgers, the sound of my nieces and nephews screaming as they ran through the sprinkler on the lawn. Normal. It was supposed to be normal. Mark held court by the grill, spatula in hand like a scepter. He was telling my Uncle Phil about some impossible deal he was working on. I was just leaning against the fence, enjoying the sun on my face, a cold bottle of beer in my hand. He saw me smiling and seized the moment. "Looks like Alex is happy just watching the world go by," he announced, his voice carrying over the chatter. "But we gotta keep an eye on this one now." Suddenly came into a little bit of money. The yard got quiet, all eyes turned to me. My mom looked confused. "What's he talking about, honey?" "Nothing, Mom. It's not a big deal." "Not a big deal?" Mark laughed, a loud, performative sound. He walked over and slung an arm around my shoulders, squeezing a little too tight. "My cousin here is being modest. Let's just say he won't be worrying about his freelance deadlines anymore." He was smiling at me, but his eyes were hard. This was his way of taking control of the narrative, of making my news his news. "Wow, Alex, that's wonderful," my aunt said. "What are you going to do with it?" my cousin asked. Mark answered for me. "That's what I'm trying to figure out for him. We got to look out for my cousin here. He's got a heart of gold, but let's be real, he's not exactly a Wall Street wolf. He needs all the help he can get to keep from blowing it all on. I don't know, more art supplies?" The family laughed, a gentle, loving laugh, but it stung. He was painting a picture of me for them, lucky but dumb, blessed but helpless. The clumsy cousin who stumbled into a fortune and needed Mark, the capable one, to manage it. Later, as the sun dipped down and the cicadas started their evening song, he found me alone, taking out the trash. "Hey," he said, his voice dropping its performative cheer. "You should be thanking me. I'm managing expectations, making sure nobody comes to you with their hand out. I can manage my own family, Mark." "Can you?" He took a sip of his beer, his eyes scanning the backyard. "Look, I get it. You want to be the humble guy. That's cute. But this is serious. This is business. And in business, you need a partner you can trust." He looked me dead in the eye. The setting sun cast his face in shadow, making his expression unreadable. "I'm your partner, Alex. I'm the only one who gets it. The only one who won't take advantage of you. Remember that." He clapped me on the back, a hard, jarring smack, and walked back to the party, leaving me alone by the recycling bins. The metallic taste of the beer bottle cap was on my tongue. The sound of his laughter echoed from the yard. For the first time, the money didn't feel like a blessing. It felt like a target on my back. And the person holding the bow was the last person I ever expected. The celebratory family cruise was his idea, of course, his magnanimous gesture. "My treat," he'd announced over the phone, his voice booming with false generosity. "Well, the deposit anyway. You can cover the rest once. You know, everything's liquid. Consider it your first investment." I should have said no. Every instinct told me to. The pressure was a constant, low hum in the background of my life now, like the persistent buzz of a faulty light bulb. But part of me, the naive part that still remembered building those tree forts, wanted to believe this was his awkward way of making amends, of celebrating together. The ship was a floating city of noise and light. The air was thick with the salty tang of the ocean and the cloying sweetness of sunscreen. Everywhere you turned, there was the sound of laughter, of music, of slot machines paying out. Mark was in his element. He held court by the pool, holding a colorful cocktail, holding forth on the real estate market to anyone who would listen. He was the king of this plastic kingdom. I kept to the edges, I'd wander the decks at night, the metal railings cold under my palms, and just watch the black, churning water below. The ticket was a constant, anxious weight in the inside pocket of my jacket. I never let it out of my sight. The night of the special dinner, the fancy one that required a jacket, I dressed carefully. The suit was new. It was the first thing I'd bought for myself. It felt stiff and unfamiliar. I stood in front of the mirror in my small stateroom, the fluorescent light humming overhead, and tried to tie my tie. My fingers felt clumsy. I could hear Mark in the room next door, his laughter loud and sharp through the thin wall. He was getting ready with his wife. I heard her say something, her voice a murmur. And then his, clear as day, "Just follow my lead tonight. This is it, the big pitch." A cold knot tightened in my stomach. The big pitch, for what? I finished dressing and stepped out onto my private balcony to get some air, to try and shake the feeling of dread. The ocean was a vast, black emptiness. The only sound was the wind and the steady, rhythmic crash of the ship cutting through the waves. It was peaceful. For a moment. Then I heard his voice again, not through the wall. From his balcony, just next to mine, separated only by a partition. He was on the phone. His tone was different. All the false bonhomie was gone. Stripped away, what was left was cold, calculated, and dripping with a contempt that made my blood run cold. "No, I'm not worried," he was saying. "He's completely clueless. Thinks we're here to bond?" A pause. I stood frozen, my hand gripping the cold metal railing. The ticket is still in his possession, but that's just a formality. He trusts me. He's always trusted me. It's his fatal flaw. I could hear the smirk in his voice. By the time we dock, he'll sign over half into the fund, my fund. It's a beautiful thing. He gets to feel like he's making a smart investment with his big brother, and I get the capital to finally make a real play. No more scraping for commissions. Another pause. The ship rolled gently over a wave. Dad always said I was the smart one, the one with the killer instinct. This proves it. This isn't just about the money. This is about order. It's about things being the way they're supposed to be. He's the side character. I'm the main character. He got lucky. I'm making my own luck. I heard him take a sip of something. Ice clinked in a glass. "Don't worry about it. He's a gullible idiot. He always has been. He doesn't deserve this. I do. I've earned it. Tonight, at dinner, I'll lay the groundwork. Make him feel insecure. Then I'll swoop in with the solution. He'll be so grateful for my guidance, he'll sign anything I put in front of him." The person on the other end of the line said something. Mark laughed. It was a short, ugly sound. Exactly. A sheep being led to the slaughter. Talk soon. The call ended. I stood there on the balcony, the salt spray cold on my face. The hum of the ship's engine vibrated up through the deck and into my bones. The words echoed in my head, each one a shard of glass. Gullible idiot. Side character. Sheep being led to the slaughter. It wasn't about the money. Not really. It was about something much darker, much deeper. It was about a lifetime of him needing to be above me. Of my success feeling to him like a personal failure. A cosmic error he needed to correct. The betrayal wasn't just a financial scam, it was an annihilation. He wasn't just trying to take my money, he was trying to prove I was never worthy of it in the first place. I looked down at my new suit, the symbol of my new beginning, and I knew with a chilling certainty that the night was not going to go the way he had planned. The dining room was all soft lighting and gleaming brass. The clatter of fine silverware and the low murmur of conversations wrapped around us. Our family table was a bubble of tense anticipation. Mark was holding court, of course. He'd ordered a bottle of ridiculously expensive wine, making a show of swirling it, sniffing it, before giving the waiter a solemn nod of approval. "You have to understand asset liquidity," he was saying to my Uncle Phil, gesturing with his glass, "especially with a sudden windfall. It can't just sit. It's a tool. And if you don't know how to use the tools—" He let the sentence hang, then his eyes slid over to me. "Well, that's what friends are for, right, Alex?" I just nodded, pushing my roasted vegetables around my plate. The food tasted like ash. Every word out of his mouth was a performance, a carefully laid piece of track leading to his destination. I could see the plan unfolding exactly as he described it on the balcony. He waited until the main course plates were cleared. The perfect moment. Everyone was full, relaxed, a little tipsy. He leaned forward, his voice taking on a grave, confidential tone. "You know, we're not just here to celebrate," he said, looking around the table at our family. "We're here to plan Alex's future." All eyes turned to me. I kept mine on my water glass. "I've been working on something," Mark continued, his voice swelling with pride. "A new fund, high yield, exclusive. It's for people who understand that real wealth isn't about luck. It's about strategy. It's about making smart moves with smart people." He turned to me fully now, his expression a mask of brotherly concern. "I want you to be my first major investor, Alex. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. For both of us. This is how we make that money work for you. This is how we protect you." The table was silent. My aunt looked impressed. My mom looked worried. "Mark," I said, my voice quiet but clear, "I appreciate that. I really do. But I've got my own plans. I've been talking to some financial advisors, looking at a few different options." The mask slipped. Just for a second, a flash of irritation in his eyes. He hadn't expected a no. He'd never expected any pushback at all. "Options?" he said, the word laced with condescension. "Alex, come on. You're not equipped to evaluate options. These people you're talking to, they'll see you coming a mile away. They'll smell the new money on you." He said, "New money," like it was something foul. "I need to do what's right for me, Mark." His smile was tight. "And what's right for you is listening to the one person in this family who actually knows how to build wealth. The one person who isn't just going to take a miracle and piss it away on, what, a new car, a bigger apartment? That's small-time thinking." The pressure was building. I could feel it in the air. He was cornering me, publicly, trying to force me into compliance through sheer embarrassment. He needed to win. He needed everyone to see him win. He picked up his wine glass, swirling the dark red liquid. He was leaning towards me, his voice dropping, but every word carried. "You have to understand your own limitations, cousin. It's not an insult. It's a fact. Some people are builders. Some people are just passengers." He gestured around the lavish dining room with his glass. "You got a first-class ticket, Alex, but you don't know how to act like you belong here. You're still looking for the life raft instructions under your seat." A few nervous titters from the family. He was humiliating me, and it was working. My face felt hot. I saw his eyes flicker down to my new suit, a look of pure disdain on his face. This was it. This was his move. His hand slipped. The entire glass of deep, blood-red Merlot tipped forward. It happened in slow motion, the arc of the wine, the gasp from my Aunt Carol. The cold, shocking splash as it hit my chest, soaking immediately through the white dress shirt into the jacket. The room froze. Mark set the empty glass down with a deliberate clink. He didn't even feign surprise. He looked at the spreading stain, then up at my face, and he smiled. It was a cold, victorious smile. "Oops," he said, his voice dripping with faux sympathy. "Alex, man, I am so sorry. My hand just slipped." He shook his head, playing to the audience. "Guess some people just can't carry themselves with class, huh, Alex? Always the clumsy one." He leaned in closer, his voice a venomous whisper meant just for me, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "Don't worry, buddy. It was probably a cheap suit anyway. I can recommend my tailor if you can ever afford him." The humiliation was complete. He had drenched me, literally and figuratively. He had shown everyone at the table my place. Beneath him, a clumsy passenger in his world, he sat back, expecting me to shrink, to stammer, to get up and run to the bathroom in shame. He expected a sheep. But the sheep was gone. The laughter died in their throats. The air went out of the room. All I could feel was the cold, wet fabric clinging to my chest. All I could smell was the sharp, acidic tang of the wine. Mark's smirk was frozen on his face, waiting for my reaction. waiting for the anger, the tears, the flight. He didn't get any of it. A strange, profound calm settled over me. It was the quiet after a storm, the stillness at the eye of a hurricane. The heat in my face cooled. The hammering of my heart slowed to a steady, determined rhythm. I looked at him, and for the first time, I didn't see my cousin. I saw a stranger. A pathetic, small man who had just shown his entire hand to the world, and he was too arrogant to even realize it. I slowly reached for my white linen napkin. The fabric was coarse against my fingertips. I dabbed at my chest, a slow, deliberate motion. It was a useless gesture. The stain was set. The suit was ruined. But I did it anyway. It was a performance of my own, a moment of theater to let the silence stretch, to let the tension in the air become unbearable. Mark's smirk began to falter. He shifted in his seat. He wasn't getting the reaction he'd paid for. "You're right, Mark," I said. My voice was low, but it didn't quiver. It cut through the silence like a knife. It wasn't the voice of a victim. It was the voice of a judge. This suit was cheap. I let my hand fall from my chest and moved to the inside breast pocket of my soaked jacket. The fabric was heavy and cold. My fingers, steady and sure, found the small, hard rectangle nestled within, the one thing I had protected. The one thing he didn't know he was attacking. I carefully pulled it out. The thick, high-quality paper was slightly damp. A single perfect drop of red wine had bled onto one corner, a tiny scarlet teardrop on the pale green surface. I held it up between my thumb and forefinger for a second, letting the light from the crystal chandelier above glint off its surface. I saw Mark's eyes track the movement. Confusion first. Then a dawning, horrible curiosity. I didn't slam it down. I didn't throw it. I placed it gently on the pristine white tablecloth, right beside my wine-soaked plate. I smoothed it out with my palm, careful, reverent. The familiar logo. The printed numbers. The date. The silence was absolute now. You could hear the distant clatter of a dish cart from the kitchen, the hum of the ship's engine beneath our feet. My Aunt Carol broke the silence, her voice a reedy whisper. "Alex, what is that?" Mark wasn't looking at her. He was staring at the ticket. His brain was trying to process it, to connect the dots. I saw the journey on his face, the arrogant confusion, the flicker of recognition, the slow, seismic shift into utter disbelief, and finally, the cold, gut-wrenching horror. The color drained from his face. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. I looked directly at him, my eyes never leaving his. My voice was still calm, conversational, but every word was a precisely aimed bullet. This suit was 50% off at Macy's. It cost $127. I tapped a finger on the ticket right on the wine-stained corner. This ticket is worth $1,200,000. I let the number hang in the air. I let it sink in for everyone at the table. I saw my mother's hand fly to her mouth, my uncle's eyes widen. "Or," I continued, my tone dropping to something colder, sharper. "It was, before you covered it in $200 worth of Cabernet Sauvignon." The fallout was immediate. But it wasn't from me. It was from our family. A collective, sharp intake of breath, a gasp from Mark's wife. My Uncle Phil half rose from his chair, his face a thundercloud. "Mark? What is he talking about? $1 million?" Mark was statue still. His eyes were glued to the ticket, to that damning red stain. His world, his perfect superior world, was collapsing in real time, and there was absolutely nothing he could do to stop it. The execution was complete, and I hadn't even raised my voice. The silence shattered. It didn't break gently. It exploded. A cacophony of voices erupted from our table, so loud that diners across the room turned to stare. $1 million? Alex, is this true?" My mother cried out, her voice trembling. Uncle Phil was on his feet, his face a dark purple. "Mark, what in God's name have you done?" Mark's wife, Sarah, was staring at him, her expression a mixture of horror and dawning comprehension. "You knew?" she whispered, the words barely audible but cutting through the noise. "You knew about this? All this talk about your fund, it was for his money?" Mark didn't look at her. He didn't look at anyone. His eyes were locked on the ticket on the table, on the tiny red stain that marked his crime for everyone to see. He looked small. The bluster, the confidence, the smug superiority, it all evaporated, leaving behind a hollowed-out shell of a man. His shoulders slumped. He seemed to shrink in his finely tailored suit. The waiter and the maître d' were approaching cautiously, their professional smiles replaced with looks of alarm. The spectacle was complete. I watched it all unfold. I watched the anger, the accusations, the sheer chaos I had unleashed. I had wanted this. I had dreamed of this moment of vindication, of watching the scales of justice tip violently in my favor. But a strange thing happened as I sat there, the cold wine seeping into my skin. I didn't feel the triumph. I felt a hollow emptiness opening up inside me, a vast, cold void where my anger used to be. The noise of the family argument seemed to fade into a distant buzz. All I could see was Mark's face. It wasn't the face of a monster. It was the face of a broken man. A man whose entire identity, the success, the charm, the superiority, had just been publicly vaporized. He wasn't fighting back. He wasn't making excuses. He was just defeated. And I had done that. I looked at the ticket, my freedom. It was stained, not just with wine, but with this moment, with this venom, with the utter destruction of my oldest friend. The moral twist wasn't about the money. It was about the cost. In my righteous quest for revenge, I hadn't just destroyed my enemy. I had destroyed the last remaining shred of our history. I had taken the memory of two boys in a tree fort, and I had burned it to the ground in a very public, very brutal bonfire. The victory felt ash-bitter in my mouth. Aunt Carol was sobbing. Uncle Phil was jabbing a finger in Mark's face, his words a low, furious growl I couldn't make out. Mark just took it. His head was bowed. I had wanted to shatter his illusion. And I had. But watching the pieces of him lying there on the fancy dining room floor, I didn't know who I had become to do it. The quiet, steady graphic designer was gone. In his place was someone capable of engineering this kind of utter devastation. The revenge was perfect. It was elegant. It was deserved. So why did I feel like I'd lost something too? I slowly reached out and picked up the ticket. The paper was still damp. I didn't look at anyone. I just stood up. The chair legs scraped against the floor, a harsh sound that momentarily quieted the storm. "Alex, honey," my mother began, her eyes full of tears. "It's okay, Mom," I said, my voice flat, tired. "It's over." I didn't look at Mark. I couldn't. I just turned and walked away from the table, from the ruins of my family, from the cousin I had once called a brother. The path to the door felt a mile long. Every step echoed in the now silent dining room. I pushed through the heavy doors and out into the cool night air of the deck, the ticket clutched in my cold, wet hand. The wind whipped around me, carrying the salt of the sea and the faint sounds of music from a deck party below. I had won. I had executed my perfect revenge. And all I felt was alone. The return ticket home was quiet, no family, no fanfare. I sat by the window, watching the endless, flat blue of the ocean meet the sky. The ticket, now dried and safely sealed in a clear plastic sleeve, was in my backpack. The stain was still there, a faint, rusty smudge in the corner. A permanent reminder. The claims process was bureaucratic, all fluorescent lights and forms. The woman behind the thick glass window raised an eyebrow at the stain, noted it on her paperwork with a non-committal hum. But the numbers were clear. The barcode scanned. The money was real. I didn't buy a sports car. I didn't move into a penthouse. The first thing I did was pay off my parents' mortgage. I showed up at their house one afternoon, the deed in my hand. The smell of my mom's meatloaf was coming from the kitchen, the familiar creak of the floorboards in the hallway. I handed them the paperwork. My dad cried. Really cried. That was worth more than any car. I set up college funds for my nieces and nephews. Not a flashy trust fund, just a quiet, steady investment in their futures. The rest I put away. Managed by a stern, boring, and brilliantly competent woman in an office downtown who charged by the hour and had no interest in being my friend. I bought a small house. Not a mansion. A 2-bedroom craftsman with a porch that gets the morning sun. I work less now. I take on projects I love. I spend my afternoons sketching in the quiet of my own home. The only sound, the scratch of pencil on paper and the smell of fresh coffee brewing. I never heard from Mark again. Ripples of the story made it back to me through the family grapevine. His wife left him. His business, built on a foundation of hot air and other people's money, collapsed. He moved to another state. The golden boy was tarnished, forgotten. People ask me if I'm happy. And I am. I have peace. I have security. I have the freedom to live my life on my own terms. But that night on the cruise ship, it changed me. It wasn't just about winning. It was about understanding the price of a victory like that. I look at the faint stain on that ticket sometimes, and I don't just see $1 million. I see a glass of red wine. I see the shattered look on my aunt's face. I see the hollowed-out shell of the boy I grew up with. The money bought me freedom. It bought my parents peace of mind. It bought a future for the kids in my family. But letting go of the anger, letting go of the need for that specific brutal revenge, that bought me a different kind of peace. A quieter one. The kind you find on a sunny porch with a pencil in your hand and no one to answer to. I learned that revenge is a fire that burns both ways. It warms you for a moment, but it can also consume everything you used to be. You can be right. You can be justified. You can engineer the perfect, most satisfying payback. But you have to ask yourself what's left in the ashes, and if it was worth the person you had to become to light the match. The money was a lottery win. A chance. But understanding that was the real fortune.